What do you think is Putin's worst nightmare right now?
Effort by the U.S. government has been doomed from the beginning. They've never cared about the origin of the conflict. They've never said that Russia was the aggressor, and they've put all the pressure on Ukraine. The path to victory, or the theory of victory for Ukraine, includes the destruction of Russia's oil and gas infrastructure so that they cannot export to China and India and Turkey.
Hello everyone, my name is Alex, and today I have the great honor of welcoming a very special guest, Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, retired. He is a combat veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan, and today he is a senior advisor and one of the leading strategic voices on European and transatlantic security. General, thank you very much for joining us today. I truly appreciate your time and your valuable insights on the security of my country and the wider region. It is a real privilege to have you with us.
Well, thank you very much for the privilege.
In a recent interview, you made a striking suggestion that there may already be signed business agreements between the United States and Russia, which the administration plans to present by July 4. General, if your theory about backchannel business deals between Washington and Moscow tied to summer political deadlines is correct, does that mean Ukrainian infantry are effectively buying time with their lives for American political strategies? As a professional soldier, where you draw the line between necessary diplomacy and the geopolitical betrayal of an ally for the sake of a campaign narrative?
So, first of all, there's no Ukrainian soldier dying for an American business deal. It is up to Ukraine whether or not they accept any peace negotiations brokered by the United States. So, whatever the Trump administration is trying to do, and his envoy, Mr. Witkoff and Mr. Kushner, that's, you know, they cannot make Ukraine accept any outcome. In fact, this is one of the things that has been most surprising to me is why does the U.S. government have any leverage? They no longer provide anything except what they sell to Europe for Ukraine. Perhaps perhaps it makes sense actually that the Ukrainian government would want to at least keep the U.S. close and interested. But at the end of the day, if it's a bad deal for Ukraine, then actually I think it's a bad deal for America. And I hope that Ukraine is confident that it can make decisions that are in its own best interest. Europeans, of course, are increasingly worried about this conflict, and Europeans can see that the Trump administration's approach is not good for Ukraine. So this is up for Ukraine to decide. Now, and also, just to be fair, these reports of deals, this is entirely believable to me, but I don't know that that's a fact. I heard that some very senior people in the Munich Security Conference this past weekend, well-known, respected people that talked about this. So given the nature of Mr. Witkoff and Mr. Kushner, it's entirely believable that that's what's happening. The bottom line, though, is Ukraine has to decide when it's time and when there's a situation that is acceptable for Ukrainians. I think nobody in Ukraine trusts Russia, and so you're right to be cautious.
President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that yesterday talks in Geneva were merely a delaying tactic by Russia at a time when real progress could have been achieved. Why then did Donald Trump recently send a message urging Ukraine to get to the negotiation table faster? Why is that pressure directed at Kiev rather than at Putin?
Yeah, this has been the question all along. That's why I think one of the reasons why I think the so-called negotiation effort by the U.S. government has been doomed from the beginning. They never cared about the origin of the conflict. They've never said that Russia was the aggressor, and they've put all the pressure on Ukraine. So I think your president is correct that whatever's going on now, these are Russian delaying tactics. Every time I hear Mr. Witkoff or somebody say we made good progress today, I don't believe it at all because they, you know, they only embrace the Russian perspective. And so again, me as an outsider, I am reluctant to tell Ukrainians you have to keep fighting because there's no risk to me. It's Ukrainians are bearing the full burden here, but I think that the your government can see what's going on, and I would trust your government will make what's the best decisions for Ukraine, and I hope that the United States will eventually change our approach. Certainly, I heard many senators this past weekend in Munich talk about their support for Ukraine and their belief that in a few more days that they will get this sanctions package done that's been talked about for so long. In the meanwhile, Europeans are going to have to fill that gap.
You said Russia is already at war with Europe in the gray zone, yet it seems Putin may have discovered an Article 5 vulnerability, slicing the salami so tinily that no single act, whether it's blowing up a factory or sending drone into Latvia, appears sufficient no trigger war to trigger war. Has NATO become a hostage to its own bureaucracy? Is the alliance technically incapable of responding decisively to hybrid aggression of Russia?
No, it's not incapable, and I would not agree with your characterization that it is a hostage to bureaucracy. Article 5 is a political decision. Any nation can go to the alliance and say, hey, we've been attacked, their drones or their cyber or whatever, and then the nations can decide whether or not that constitutes an armed attack. In the meanwhile, though, individual nations, of course, can and should be reacting to these Russian gray zone operations, the sabotage, the disinformation, the cyber attacks, all the violations of airspace, the shadow fleet vessels. Um, and I think more and more countries are getting closer to that point where they will begin to do that. So it may not, a NATO response may not be what's best way to deal with it because so much of this is about enforcing the law, for example, and nations taking steps themselves.
You mentioned the prospect of 1 million angry Russian veterans returning to a devastated economy and that Putin may struggle to maintain control. Historically, they resembles Germany after World War I, fertile ground for radical revanchism or uncontrolled chaos involving nuclear weapons. Is the West's greatest fear today not Putin's victory, but rather the total collapse of Russia? And is that why Ukraine is being armed by the teaspoon enough to bleed Russia, but not enough to cause it disintegration?
No, that's not the collapse of Russia is not the greatest fear in the West. Although some people may be concerned about it, they are concerned about what happens to nuclear weapons or energy or whatever. But I think we should prepare for that. We should think about it. How would we react if there was a collapse of the Putin government? We were not prepared for the collapse of the Soviet Union because we failed to even anticipate that that would happen. And so I think we should think about and prepare for it. I'm not talking about us causing regime change. That's up to Russian people. But we should certainly prepare for it. We should definitely not be scared of it happening. We just need to prepare for it. And I think that would help, that would improve the security of Europe for decades. For Russia, for the Putin regime to collapse and for Russia then have to go through some reforms and learn to live inside their own borders like everybody else.